I've been promising I'll read to you all for quite some time. Tonight, we're gonna read Aaron Beauregard's Nightmare Nirvana, which is a collection of short stories. I picked for our first one a very crude one, so fair warning to those who are a little squeamish. But if you're following me, then, it speaks for itself. I hope you enjoy, because this one I think was perfect for our first choice. One night stand. When Taylor brought the man home from the bar, she was expecting to sleep with him. She had her reasons for choosing him. They may not have been the most popular, but he had what she wanted. The man was rugged and grungy, a certain brutish, almost Neanderthal aura. Would have been the best description to encapsulate her snap judgment. He just seemed more masculine than the fresh-faced college boys that had been eye-fucking her all night. There was a depressing detail to his expression that showed he'd been through the ringer. That night, for some obscure, instinctual reason, she needed him. She needed someone who had been through the shit. Someone with experience. She wasn't in denial. She knew exactly who she was, and she didn't much care if the rest of the world did too. The trashiness of her routine was amusing. She did what any young person does in their party phase. Get shit-faced, zero in on a decent-looking stranger, and fuck their brains out with no strings attached. She didn't even need a first name. It was pointless to her estimation. After taking more shots than a paper target, she wouldn't remember Peter from Paul. Taylor didn't recall much of the night. There were a few chunks of memory scattered around like toys in a child's playroom. She remembered they went to her bed immediately. Clothes were stripped off, and their warm mouths connected, trading the lingering stench of their choice of alcohol. He had a bit of a nasty funk to him, but she liked that. Taylor wanted it to be dirty. That's why she chose him. Their smiles grew wide as they mimicked each other in achieving pleasure. The next morning, the man, Ben, or possibly Ken, it didn't matter. He was gone. It was just the way she'd hoped. No odd, uncomfortable awakening. No hard feelings. In fact, it went so smoothly that Taylor was already focused on the next adventure. It was while she was contemplating what the forthcoming evening of reckless debauchery would bring when she saw it. Normally, she wouldn't have thought twice about a rubber on the floor. She would have just grabbed a tissue, scooped it up along with the goop, and disposed of it. But that wasn't an option because of the glaring problem. The latex tip was busted wide open, hence there was no contents for her to clean. Did he leave it inside me? Taylor wondered. She certainly hoped not. She was in the middle of what was supposed to be the best days of her life. She sure as fuck didn't have the time, patience, or financial stability to mother some drifter's baby. Being pregnant seemed like more of a buzzkill than anything. But for the first time, abortion, in an intimate sense, came to her mind. Her initial feeling poked inside with God knew what else. There was something about it that just didn't sit right with her. While she'd never put much thought into it, her reaction was beginning to mold into what the morality of the situation meant to her. Even if it was some jobless barfly that knocked her up, the decision was on her. She rubbed her hand on her stomach as a look of discomfort swept over her. While picturing the potential offspring made her grimace, it would still be her flesh and blood, as well as the flesh and blood of her funky fling. In her mind, she pictured a weird-ass baby with a mix of their features, then a teen version of the child bringing home a report card riddled with the letter F. Finally, a middle-aged version, unwashed in his underwear, asking for $20. Still, aborting the probable dud felt cruel. It was probably a lot of thinking for nothing. Maybe the bum just didn't have an orgasm, or maybe he just shot his load elsewhere. Who knew? Maybe his boys didn't even swim. She pushed the thought out of her mind and got ready for work. It wasn't worth it to worry about a situation ultimately out of her control. 1 week after, the constant itch wasn't a good sign. It was a strange stinging sensation that left her feeling depressed and dirty. Taylor decided not to sleep with anyone for a while, at least until she felt normal again, and any potential symptoms diminished. Paranoia was setting in, and she hated that she felt different. Regret suffocated her, and although she was still horny at times, the thought of having another one-night stand sickened her. 2 weeks after, the fucking itch was deep and relentless. She was constantly clawing at her crotch and skin, ripping at it until it was dry, raw, and flaking off. Maybe she wasn't pregnant. Maybe that scummy man's dirty cock had given her something. She spent the better part of her days wondering if she had an STD. 3 weeks after, Taylor's cycle should have started. She missed her period. A pain and weight came over her like she'd never felt before. She was horrified by the possibilities, but knew hope alone wasn't going to change her worsening condition. There was a time when everyone had to face the music. She picked up the phone and called a gynecologist. Days later, Taylor didn't have a designated doctor or gynecologist. She tried to stay clear of any medical personnel unless she was deathly ill. They made her nervous. There was so much in the world that was bad for a person, and vice was the shit she was usually into. Drinking, drugs, sex. She feared them. In her mind, doctors were only the evil harbingers of misfortune. Just entering the building alone made Taylor's skin crawl. As she crept hesitantly into the building, still not wanting to go through with it, she was all nervous as she was rattling like a pile of dead tree leaves in a bone-chilling wind. The doctor's assistant, an attractive woman with a large nose, led her into the exam room. She could tell she was frightened, but didn't know why. She continuously reassured Taylor that everything would be all right. After closing the door behind them, she helped Taylor to the table. "Now, what brings you here, sweetheart?" the woman asked with a stretching smile. I I slept with a man, and the next morning I found a broken condom on the floor. I've been really itchy ever since, and I feel this deep, stinging pain inside. I don't know if he gave me something, or if I'm pregnant, or if this is all in my head. I'm so confused. The woman could see she was teetering on the verge of tears. "Oh, honey, it's okay. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. You're gonna be just fine." Suddenly, Dr. Guyver pushed open the door. For reasons unsaid and unknown, his face was covered by a white sanitary mask. He didn't greet Taylor or offer words of comfort. He simply snapped his gloved fingers at his assistant, and she promptly elevated Taylor's feet up. She secured the two steel bridges on the sides of the table and helped Taylor spread her legs nice and wide. The doctor took a seat in front of her exposed privates and plucked a steel instrument from the rectangular stand beside him. Without explaining his intent or warming her up first, he raised his latex hand and inserted both of his fingers as well as the utensil inside Taylor. She was shocked but silent as he examined her. "Jar!" Dr. Guyver commanded, as his assistant handed him a glass receptacle. His next command, "Tweezers!" came out. She satisfied that request just as effectively, handing him an enormous pair in mere seconds. "Jesus Christ, another one," he murmured to himself. His tone was harsh and unthoughtful. "Am I pregnant?" Taylor cried, tears running down her tight cheeks. "Be still," he commanded, snubbing her query. Taylor was so stressed out and upset by the suffocating pressure of the situation that she blacked out just as her mind finished projecting the yellow, elated smirk off of her disgusting partner. Everything was fuzzy when she finally awoke. Dr. Guyver stood over her stoically, his mask still quarantining his nose and mouth. The bright light pinned to his obscuring glasses beamed down on her. The fear was crushing. What's wrong with me? I had the itch and no period. Am I pregnant? No. Then what's wrong? Tell me what the fuck is wrong with me, doctor? She begged. From the stand just outside of her vantage point, Dr. Guyver extended his arm and retrieved the glass jar he had previously requested. Inside, amongst the blood splatter, sat a variety of plump, overfed bedbugs. They ranged in size, but the commonality was that each one was filled to capacity. The squirming balls of blood dragged their inept bodies ever so slowly as Taylor's scream ripped through the office. The doctor didn't seem fazed by her reaction. Taylor's hysterics calmed, but didn't cease as he continued to explain himself. Young lady, your generation is one of wonders. But what many of you fail to see is that your freedoms have a cost. As a result of your nomadic ways, these bugs, bed bugs, have evolved. They're now more resilient than ever and spreading with the blink of an eye. He held the glass up to the light and examined them even more closely, as if admiring them. They have more advanced instincts now and additional knowledge about their food source, our bodies. Do you want to know something fascinating? His question was delivered in such a nonchalant demeanor that it bordered on sociopathic. The answer seemed obvious, but Taylor still maintained a sniffling silence. Trust me, you're not the first woman to come in here under these circumstances. Everything I'm explaining to you is from experience. It's become so much more common now, this vile little problem. With society's ever-growing moral decay, these little devils travel well. They know us intimately, almost as good as we know each other. They know us so intimately that in many areas around the globe, their breeding and nesting routine now aligns succinctly with the woman's menstrual cycle. They now progressed enough to understand where the blood feast lies. Taylor's eyes bugged out of her head, and the veins protruded beneath her skin. Those were inside me? She cried, wishing he would lie or be speechless. Yes. But they're out now. You got all of them, right? I believe so. What do you mean you believe so? Get them all out of me right now, goddammit! Why can't you be sure? The doctor let his glasses slide down his nose a bit, allowing him to make eye contact with Taylor. He held the repulsive jar of parasitic insects up one final time. Because bedbug eggs are typically 1/25th of an inch, and the ones that we found inside you are all large enough to be pregnant. Thank you, Aron Beauregard, for such beautiful imagery. Hope you enjoyed these bedtime stories with Carol.